They put up posters telling everybody to come build ships, come win the war. So they came, 10,000 black workers out of the South looking for jobs and a fair shot. And the government said, all right, you can build the ships, but you can't live where the white workers live. Before World War II, Richmond, California was a sleepy little town, 24,000 people. Mud flats, marshland, and not much else. Then Pearl Harbor happened, and all of a sudden, a guy named Henry Kaiser decided he was going to build ships. A lot of freaking ships. The Richmond Shipyards became the biggest in the country, 90,000 workers at its peak. They built 747 ships in 4 years. 740 freaking 7 of them. The population of Richmond, California exploded past 100,000 practically overnight. A big chunk of that, about 10,000, were black families from the South. They came for the same reason anybody comes to a boomtown. Jobs, money, a better life. And these jobs were real. The government needed them badly. The pitch was simple. An arsenal of democracy, where everybody pitches in. We all can do it if we just work together. And they did. Black women welded. Black men built Liberty ships. Miss Estine Crowner, a former waitress, became a scaler on the SS George Washington Carver. Alvia Scott, Hattie Carpenter, Flossie Bertros, waiting for their chance to weld their first piece of steel. Here's a picture of them. 3 black women, goggles on, ready to roll. Looks like the American dream, right? Everybody pulling together. Except for that's not the whole story. Let's talk about where they lived. This is Atchison Village, built in 1941. 450 units, winding streets, nice yards, a community center, and a park. Government housing for shipyard workers. Sounds great, except Atchison Village was for whites only. Betty Hardison lived there, a white woman. Her husband was management. She remembered it fondly. The dinner parties, the church groups, the neighbors sharing vegetables from their supper gardens. Good memories. Meanwhile, the black workers who built the exact same ships, they got North Richmond, unincorporated land near the city dump. No running water, no electric, no sewers. They were basically told, what do you need toilets for? You live out in the mud flats. Just shit in a bucket and throw it out your back door. The Richmond Housing Authority, the same federal government that put up those Rosie posters, they drew a line. It said white workers here, black workers over there. Even in the housing projects that did allow black families, they put them in separate buildings, no integrated activities allowed. You could weld the same steel, but you couldn't live on the same street. This is Betty Reed Solskin. She was the park ranger who basically forced this museum to tell the truth, and she put it like this. Rosie the Riveter is a white woman's story. Betty was a young black woman working in the shipyards during the war. She clerked for an all-black auxiliary lodge of the Boilermaker Union. Why an auxiliary? Because the regular union, the white union, wouldn't let black workers join. So they needed you to build the ships. They just didn't need you to have a vote or a nice house or the same union card. By 1944, the war's still going on, the ships are still being launched, and the black community in Richmond had had enough. They formed the local chapter of the NAACP and started pushing back against the housing authority demanding equality. This is the part that usually gets left out of the museum versions. The fight wasn't just overseas, it was right here, over who got to live where and who got running water. And it worked. Slowly, incompletely, but it worked. Atchison Village eventually became a housing cooperative, the first, affordable, and still standing today. The houses are still there. The segregation isn't, or at least not legally. The museum tells a story now, but it took Betty Reed Solskin at 84 years old becoming a park ranger to make sure it did. What gets remembered is a function of who's in the room doing the remembering. That was her quote, and she was right. For decades, the Rosie story was just the poster, the bandana, the flexed arm. No mention of who got shut out, who got housing next to the dumps, who had to fight just to join the union. The ships are gone, most of the Rosies are gone, and Betty Reed Solskin didn't retire until she was 101 years old. Betty was a real badass, a social justice warrior who spent the last 20 years of her life making sure this story was not forgotten. And even after all her efforts, the exhibit on the housing discrimination is crammed into one small corner in this museum. If you weren't paying attention, you'd probably walk right past it. They needed black workers to win the war, so why'd they make 'em live like they didn't belong here?